Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhudam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanang Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we'll chant in unison the verses. Text 48. Yogashta kudu karmani sangam tvaktva dhananjaya Siddhya siddhyosamo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. Translation. Be steadfast in yoga, O Arjuna. Perform your duty and abandon all attachment to success or failure. Such evenness of mind is called yoga. Text 49. Durena hyavaram karma buddhi yoga dhananjaya buddhau sharanam anvicha kripana palahetava. Translation. O Dhananjaya, rid yourself of all fruitive activities by devotional service and surrender fully to that consciousness. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. Text 50. Buddhi yukto jahatiha ubhe sukrita duskrite tasmad yogaya yujyasva yoga karma sukoshalam. Translation. A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad actions, even in this life. Therefore, strive for yoga, O Arjuna, which is the art of all work. Text 51. Karmajam buddhi yuktahi phalam tvaktva manishina Janma bandha vinirmukta padam gacchantya-namayam. Translation. The wise, engaged in devotional service, take refuge in the Lord and free themselves from the cycle of birth and death by renouncing the fruits of action in the material world. In this way, they can attain that state beyond all miseries. Text 52. Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyati tadishyati tada gantasya nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. Translation. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. 53. Ate yadastasyati nishchala samadhavachala buddhis tada yogam avapsyasi. Translation. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas And when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. 54. Arjuna Uvacha Stita
Prajasyasya
Prajasyapasa
kapasa
Samadhi
samadhistasya keshava stitadi kim prabhaseta yemasita vachetake.
Translation. Arjuna said, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak and what is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk? 55. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Prajahati Yada
Adhikamam
Sarvan Artha
sarvartha
Manogatan Atmanevatmana Tushta Stita Pragyasta Dochate. The blessed Lord said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of sense desire, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. 56. Dukeshvanudvignamana Sukeshu Vigataspriha Vitaraga Krodha Stitadir Munir Uchate. Translation. One who is not disturbed in spite of the threefold miseries, who is not elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called the stage of steady mind. 57. Yes,
Sarvatranu Tatat Prapya Subha Subham
Nabhi Nandati
Nandati Nadvesti Tasya Praja Pratishtita.
Translation. He who is without attachment, who does not rejoice when he obtains good, nor lament when he obtains evil, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. The last text, 58. Yada sangharate chayam purmo aniva sarvasha indriyan artevyas tasya
Praja Pratishtita.
Translation. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects as the tortoise draws his limbs within it in knowledge. Haribol. Hare Krishna. We ask for the blessings of all the devotees, Maharaj. Maharaj, would you like to speak on this verse? These verses? So now we read purport for.
Be steadfast in yoga, O Arjuna. Perform your duty and abandon all attachment to success or failure. Such evenness of mind is called yoga. Purport. Krishna tells Arjuna that he should act in yoga. And what is that yoga? Yoga means to concentrate the mind upon the Supreme.
Arjuna is simply advised to act according to the dictation of Krishna. The following of Krishna's dictation is real yoga. And this is practiced in the process called Krishna consciousness. By Krishna consciousness only can one give up the sense of proprietorship. One has to become the servant of Krishna, or the servant of Krishna. That is the right way to discharge duty in Krishna consciousness, which alone can help one to act in yoga. Arjuna is a Kshatriya, and as such, he is participating in the Varnashram Dharma institution. It is said in the Vishnu Puran that in the Varnashram Dharma, the whole aim is to satisfy Vishnu. No one should satisfy himself, as is the rule in the material world. One should try to satisfy Krishna. So unless one satisfies Krishna, one cannot correctly observe the principles of Varnashram Dharma. Indirectly, Arjuna was advised to act as Krishna told him. Like to say anything?
The Varnashram Dharma system is, as stated here, it's meant to please Krishna. This was confirmed by Ramananda Roy, Varnashrama Chalavata Purushena Parakpaman, Vidya Parakpaman, Vishnu Aradyate Pantan Nanya Tattav Shakaranam. Varnashram system is meant to please Vishnu. So whatever position one has in the social orders, that means occupation, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra, it doesn't matter because he can use his tendencies for pleasing Vishnu. And Vishnu's happy. He doesn't care whether one acts as a Brahmana or Kshatriya, Vaishya. It's like we have these bodies and we don't show any favoritism to one part of the body rather than another part. We don't have any discrimination against the foot or one ear or one. They're all equal. And as long as they do their part, they try their best, then everything is wonderful. So Kshatriyas can serve Krishna by upholding Dharma, carrying out the instructions of the Brahmanas, and making sure that everyone else is acting properly and not transgressing Dharma. And then there's the four spiritual orders, Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. And they're also required because along with each of these orders, there's expectation of duties, responsibilities, and they're entitled to certain things in these orders. And by following it, they make spiritual advancement automatically. For example, the brahmacharis. Brahmacharya is the first stage. So brahmacharya guru kule vasamdanto guru hitam begins at the age of 5, and he goes to the gurukula. That means the school of the spiritual master, the guru. And he gets trained in transcendental knowledge and regulation and cleanliness and how to control the senses and be humble and peaceful and mild. All these nice qualities of the Brahmins. He's given that opportunity to be taught. Then he becomes a grihastha. Grihastha means married life, family life. He has to take over basically maintaining the rest of society. So it's a very big responsibility. So he's doing the best he can for pleasing the Lord, making sure that all the family members are on the path of righteousness. And then Vanaprastha retirement stage, the retiree, he gets out of working. Working is not the goal of life, just to work and try to work till the last days of one's life or get more money. See, it's not based on that. The Vedic culture is not based on just trying to gratify the senses, rather to learn how to become satisfied only by pleasing the Lord's senses. That's the goal of life. But unfortunately, modern society has no idea what the real aim of life is. They think it's to enjoy their senses. So that's why Varnashram is so important. People say, Varnashram caste system, we don't like it. But that's not the proper understanding of what the Varnashram is. It's not based on birth, it's based on one's qualifications, guna and karma, his tendency, his occupation. And it's meant for making everyone but God conscious. People are not in favor of this because they have no interest in making the society God conscious. In fact, there's more of an interest to make the society secular, non-God conscious. So we can see the difficulty we're in and why Varnashram is so important. The countries in former Soviet Union, they were exploring, I was told this, heard from a good resource, that some of the leaders of these different countries, they were not interested in becoming capitalists. They didn't want to follow America's standard, and they didn't want to be communists anymore. So they were open to what other alternatives they had. And so some devotees explained the Varnashram system and how they could adopt that. It's a whole social system that works perfectly and has worked for thousands and thousands of years in a very successful way. So they were open to hear about it. Well, this is very good that they were willing to hear, and the more that the Krishna consciousness movement can explain it to the others, and also not just explain it, but to demonstrate it through their own farm communities, it will be very, very nice. Rural communities. City life is basically meant for increasing sense gratification, but rural life is meant for simple living and high thinking and coming to the platform of pure Krishna consciousness.
As you were mentioning a little earlier today, the Bhagavad-gita is like a guidebook, like a manual for life. So this alone should convince people when we tell them, hey, did you read the manual? Most people are running around. They don't even know there's a manual, a guidebook. It's kind of like an experiment. Most people are living life like an experiment. Just try something out, see if it works, see if you don't get too smashed. If it works okay, keep going. So this one book has really all the answers. When a devotee is educated in Bhagavad-gita, they can pretty much answer all spiritual questions that someone might have. So we're given this opportunity at a quite young age for some of us. And we are instructed, as you heard this morning, that you must share this knowledge. Try to receive it and try to spread it. So to the degree that we're realized it to that degree, we can really share also with others, because giving someone a book is one thing, but what acts even sometimes more powerfully is when one's embodied the knowledge in the book. You can become a walking book. Jai Shri Gaura Nitai Ki Jai. That's really the goal, that you can embody these teachings. That's the difference between philosophy, Gyan and Vigyan, knowledge and realization. So once they have the book, they want to understand, how does it work for me? And so we're also called to develop the realization of the subject matter within the book. And as Mars is explaining, step one is to understand Sambandha Gyan. What is this material world? So the Brahmacharya ashram is for training the living entity. This material world is not our home. When there's a little drop of water on the lotus leaf, you know it's not going to be there for a while. It's on its way out. So this life is like that. Just like that, it will be gone. Very short time. And therefore, the encouragement to follow the path of renunciation, of detachment from matter. The more we can be detached, the more we can progress spiritually. And it doesn't just mean, I'm not talking about just a Brahmacharya ashram, I'm talking about the spirit. To really try to keep everything in perspective. This is the trick of Maya, to just make us think how much we have to do in this world. In the back, in our consciousness, in our subtle consciousness, the idea that I live here, I'm going to stay here, I have to create my plans for the future and the next generations. And this is the power of Maya, that she's convincing us. We have a few moments to become self-realized, and she's convincing us so many obligations we have to do. And self-realization, that might be one of them somewhere down the list. It's not so important. There's something, let me show you this. She knows all of our weaknesses. She knows all the little weak spots. And she plays right into it. Maya Devi is a pure devotee. So actually, we can't compete with her, because she knows us better than we know ourselves. So the living entity has to take shelter, ultimately. Taking shelter of Krishna, of his devotee, of his spiritual master, is the only way that we can get out. So the illusion is very strong. Even as sadhakas, we get tossed into the waves of bewilderment. It's a very natural thing for a conditioned soul. And the point is that, as we heard this morning, we're the soul, Satchidananda, transcendental, the soul. It's a spiritual form. We've forgotten that. And so we're invested so much in these upadhis, the false designations of who we think we are, identifying with our gross body. We become obsessed with our body. We really have an obsession. And at the demands of our mind, we're obsessed with our own mind. We think whatever it says, I have to follow, I have to obey, I have to bow down. And, well, there's our intelligence and we might say our best friend, the false ego. So absorption in this material energy, this is the Prakriti. The more we're absorbed in that, the more we're disconnected spiritually. And this is what is the obstacle for the yogi. Krishna says, abandon all attachment to success or failure. Such evenness of mind is called yoga. And he says, these symptoms, one who's not disturbed in spite of the threefold miseries, who's not elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger. is called the sage of steady mind. Prabhupada gives this example of the ocean or a very deep lake. You know, Chicago, we're on Lake Michigan, very deep lake. So the sage is considered that. Why? Because he's not so obsessed with the material comings and goings. He's not so invested in that. So when chanting develops, we start realizing, hey, I have a whole nother aspect of my being, which is eternal, much more important, much more real than the temporary ups and downs of this world. I have to tolerate this world. This world is a place for tolerance. It's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to be opulent. It's not going to be beautiful. It's going to be ugly. And we need to just get out of here. So the key is chanting. The holy name is our whole process. All of our advancement is determined by the quality of our chanting. So the attention on Shravanam, Kirtanam, and eventually Smaranam. These are the most important aspects, the primary aspects that will nourish us to make the long journey of practicing Krishna consciousness in this one lifetime. If there's areas of sadhana are weak, Maya just comes right in and she takes us for a ride. So this is like the armor that we can put on: quality hearing and chanting, good sadhana. Eventually that leads to a taste. We want to get a taste in sadhana. You're reading Krishna book, you're hearing about Krishna, some attraction. Hey, that's such a beautiful reality. What am I doing here? Why am I scurrying like a hamster? Some people have pet hamsters. I don't know what the hamster has to really offer as a pet, but it's been quite popular in history. It can run on the wheel. People like to see that. They don't know that they're on the wheel watching the hamster on the wheel. So the absorption is the key to get a deeper level of taste ultimately. And that's why the hearing and chanting process is so glorified in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad-gita, Mahatmanas tu mamparta daivim praktamashti, pajantinanya manaso kitbhutadimavyam. Always chanting my glories is how the great soul, that's their natural behavior, the symptom of the great soul. What? They're always conversing about me, right? Can someone give me that shloka? A little louder. Yes. Bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nitya tushanti cha ramanti. Always great relish. We have to get the taste in spiritual life in Krishna consciousness. It's so tasty. There's such taste there, but the mind has to be a little purified. And to proportion, there's still the material taste, the spiritual taste can't develop. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's the best relisher. We're in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gaur-Nitai. They come to show how tasty spiritual life is. It's so delicious, they just become overwhelmed. They can't stop tasting. That's how much taste is in all these activities we're doing. So to transcend the mind, the ego, that's our goal. And we have to apply a strict practice. I was saying earlier today that nothing good comes easy or cheap. So the endeavor to get the highest goal, it will require that sacrifice. But Susukam Kartamaya is joyfully performed. It's very easy to make devotees happy. How? Just have a very ecstatic kirtan. Just have a wild kirtan or bhajan, or devotees will become happy. So what does this tell us? This tells us if we're not happy, we can just chant, do more kirtan. It's like an oasis that's always there. If we don't drink from it, and then we wonder why we're not feeling so happy. I think Krishna already gave the formula. We just have to take it up. The Sankirtan movement. Kevala Ananda Kanda. It's an easy process, joyfully performed just by chanting, dancing. So some of the other points mentioned here, on 51, the wise engage in devotional service, take refuge in the Lord, and free themselves from the cycle of birth and death by renouncing the fruits of action in the material world. In this way, they can attain that state beyond all miseries. So when we are assigned service, then the mind will oscillate, and we'll either be able to push ourselves for the service or give in to the fruits, the fruitive mentality. What's in it for me? But the secret is that by satisfying Krishna, we automatically become happy. So if we can ingrain that in our intelligence, we can spiritualize our intelligence, we already have the solution for happiness, to satisfy the Lord, to serve the Lord. What time does the class go until? Okay. And then text 52, I always like this verse. Yada te moha kalilam buddhir vyati tarishyati tada gandhasi nirvedam shrotavyasya shrutasya cha. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. So it's applicable on many levels, but one is, what do we hear in our life? Whatever we hear about, we begin to contemplate, we begin to meditate, and it shapes our activity. So this is saying, when you become advanced, you will become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. All of the kind of talk about this material world. Where is the happiness? Prahlad Maharaj says it's just in talking about it. This is what advertisers know. Just put it on a big billboard. It will look like it's attractive, but actually when you get it, it's not very attractive. So the happiness of this material world, it's only in hearing about it. It's really not there. What is the highest happiness? A few moments, sensory pleasure. It's mixed with pain. It's really suffering. So when one gets a taste for the spiritual topics, everything else is, one can become indifferent. That's what an indication here. We can become indifferent. The higher taste, param drishta nivartate, that will save us. To somehow or other get the higher taste. It can't be mechanically, artificially done. What can repression accomplish? I have to take seriously the sadhana process of hearing and chanting, aspiring to get a higher taste, then naturally we can give up the lower taste, the lower conditioning, the lower attractions of Maya. And text 57, he who is without attachment, who does not rejoice when he obtains good, nor lament when he obtains evil, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. So I had this realization of the importance of tolerance. To tolerate suffering. As sadhakas, we may go through suffering. It's okay. We can admit that. Sometimes we're not happy. If we can tolerate that, then you've passed. Not that I have to be blissed out all the time, but if I can tolerate the sad, when the downtime, the suffering, then you're tapping into that higher dimension of bliss. It's there. It will come. It's a deeper, it's like getting more absorbed in yourself and who you really are. So being able to tolerate not rejoicing. The happy times will come, the sad times will come. One who's equal, he's a yogi. It doesn't say he's blissed out all the time, he's a yogi. It says he's equal in happiness and distress. He's a yogi. That means sometimes he'll get some distress. So he says you're fixed in perfect knowledge. So knowledge is required to study, to understand the philosophy, the tattva, Bhagavad-gita, material nature, spiritual nature. All these things are meant for meditation, actually, to contemplate. There's different levels of absorption. One is hearing. That's the beginning. Then one has to reflect on it. One has to really introspect on it. One has to try to apply it. Then comes realization. So how many points we hear every day? How many kind of stick with us? There's other dimensions of the hearing process. And the last verse is about the tortoise. We've all seen this unique animal. Some are very big. One who's able to withdraw his senses from sense objects as the tortoise draws his limbs within the shell is to be understood as truly situated in knowledge. In purport, the test of a yogi, devotee, or self-realized soul, he's able to control the senses according to his plan. Most people, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictation of the senses. That is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. The senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi or the devotee must be very strong to control the serpents, like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do nots and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the do nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. The best example set herein is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any moment wind up his senses and exhibit them again at any time for particular purposes. Some of the senses of the Krishna conscious persons are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord and are withdrawn otherwise. Keeping the senses always in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise, who keeps the senses within. So it's like you're living with 11 enemies. Because if the senses are uncontrolled, they're acting as an enemy. So how often do we think of this body like that? We think, I love the body. I get to see what I like. I like my body, you know, I like the way I am. I like the way I'm given. Everyone else is kind of weird. We think I'm the standard. Everyone else is either too tall or too short, but I'm how it should be. But the senses are actually here like serpents. They're always hankering after something. So to be conscious of that and very careful, it says here to only engage them in the service of the Lord. So the service of the Lord is all encompassing. Ideally, we're trying to make every moment an activity in the service of the Lord, because this is the only way we can get real happiness. So we must continue very earnestly, intensely to try to satisfy the Lord, the spiritual master, as it was said, carrying out trying to place their will above our own. So I'll stop here for now. Any comments, Maharaj, or the devotees? You said 8:20? Yeah.
Hare Krishna. So I really liked what you were saying about Maya Devi and how strong and how formidable she is. So I was just wondering, this Maya Devi, like what is her mentality for keeping us in this material world Why is it that what is her mentality when she tempts us?
Yeah, so she's a pure devotee. So she's actually acting on Krishna's behalf. So she has to test the living entity because in the spiritual world, we can just say it in one way. There's no nonsense allowed in the spiritual world. That would disturb the flow of the pastimes. You can just imagine these amazing exchanges are going on. Devotees with Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan, the spiritual world. If we popped in right now at the conditioned mind and ego and create havoc, we probably try to steal Krishna's jewels. We'd have all sorts of twisted desires. So she's acting to purify us, actually. She's actually the friend, because she's helping us. She's pushing us to advance. That's how the devotee should see the tests of Maya. It actually helps the devotees, because otherwise we would just be complacent and we'd remain in the material world forever. So she's actually, in that one, we should be grateful. This energy is helping mold us, push us to a higher level of service. And that's my understanding, thoughts on the matter. Anyone else? Yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the wonderful class. I think I missed the part where you were talking about the different levels of hearing. And I don't think that's something I want to miss.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have all of the stages. We can see if we can find that. But actually, it starts even before the hearing. First, there has to be some desire. If you're just doing out of ritual, don't expect to get much. Yeya tamam prapadyante. So the Krishna Katha is also Krishna. So if the attitude you approach it will be what you'll get out. How much glorification in the Bhagavatam are these just simple, just dialogues. It's just a story of dialogues. But the recipient is so eager to hear that it goes on for 12 cantos, 18,000 verses. So because they had that eagerness, then they were able to receive the speaker wanted to give. So it starts first actually with desire. There has to be some desire for transformation, desire to improve. And then the hearing has to be heard attentively. This is also a challenge for us because we tend to check out, space out. It's hard to hear attentively. But that hearing with rapt attention is described as the method. After having heard, generally there's some inquiry on the subject matter being heard. Prabhupada said if there's no inquiry, it means two things. Either you're a Paramahamsa or you didn't hear. Because naturally, then I should reflect, okay, what's my blockage? What's my obstacle? So just by posing the question, one can make progress. And then after having heard something, one has to keep it. Immediately we hear some nice points, then we go run downstairs and take prasadam. We talk about the weather. You just got pickpocketed. So then some contemplation, trying to retain. If we can even retain a few points, that's a good success for us. Then actually to try to then apply what we've heard. then ultimately, after applying with mercy, we can get some realization, a higher realization, which then gives us more faith in the process. This is how I can describe in a certain way the process, although there's more details you could research. Okay, it's 8:21. Thank you all so very much for your kind attention. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you. Such a wonderful center. And I just give a disclaimer that I'm also endeavoring, hoping to realize some of the things I'm talking about. So please forgive me for any mistakes or errors. And also as a practicing sadhaka, I can speak, but use some, as a practitioner, I give a disclaimer that I'm not perfect. I can't speak actual transcendental realization, but if something helps you, then that's Krishna's mercy. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.